Warning, this podcast contains explicit sexual language and should only be listened to at work if you're looking for an excuse to connect with your HR representative. Additionally, all mentions of the word women include cis, trans, NB, genderqueer, gender fluid, and those still figuring it out. Yes, you are welcome here.
Will you open up with me? These pages, they can feed your innermost desires. Do you feel inspired? Are you getting what you need? Are you coming curiously? A secret safe with me. And here you can simply be yourself. Sweet romance. Come on in, come on in, come on.
Disclaimer. This episode is being recorded in the fall of 2023. I do my best to be as up to date with the language, but language may evolve faster than this podcast. This should also not be considered a complete list of all terms that can be used, but a starting point. And even now, there are people who have different definitions of these terms. I hold space for them. In future episodes, we will be diving deeper into the nuances of the various spectrums. Hi, y'all. This is Jace, and you found Jace Reads Romance, a community that empowers women about sex and sexuality through the reading of romance novels. Before we even begin to have conversations about sex and sexuality, it's important to establish a shared vocabulary. It's critical that we are using the same definitions for the topics we delve into. I'm going to do my best to make this as fun as it is informative. And for that, I have my producer, Seffi, here with me to make this more than just a talking head. Seffi, say hi.
Hi.
Okay, here we go. Sex, not the act. When referring to someone's sex, we will be using it as shorthand for sex assigned at birth. This is usually assigned by the doctor or midwife and is based on the infant's anatomical and other biological characteristics. The three assignments for sex are male, female, or intersex. Under intersex, there is a wide spectrum. It is also possible that an intersex person can be misidentified at birth and not discover their true sex until puberty or even later in life. Did I have you? Did I take you along with me, Seffi?
Yes. I followed
Amazing.
That was good.
Yep.
That was good.
Thank you. Yep. So, we'll talk about sex, the act later, but when we're describing someone's sex, that's the way we're going to use it. Thank you. So moving on to gender. Gender is the characteristics and roles of folks according to social norms. And this includes socially constructed roles, behaviors, activities, and attributes. This is just big umbrella of what gender is. And a further note, gender exists outside of the individual. So what gender is, big umbrella picture, is social rather than individual.
Okay.
Love it.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Thank you. I know, right?
Yeah.
Because then we've got gender identity. And this is where we get personal. Gender identity is a person's inner sense of their gender. And this is a huge umbrella term for many different others. So some things that fall under this umbrella term are masculine, typically applied to people of the male sex, feminine, typically applied to people of the female sex, non-binary, sometimes called NB or androgen, not adhering to either masculine or feminine, and gender fluid, someone who goes back and forth between masculine, feminine, and or non-binary. Note number one. Yeah, 2 notes, y'all. Gender queer is often an umbrella term for anyone who does not fall under the gender binary of masculine and feminine. And note number 2, this is different from gender expression. and I will not be defining gender expression.
Okay.
So when we break down gender identity, you might hear some terms that people use to describe their gender. We're going to go over a few of those. The first one is cisgender. And this is a person who identifies with their sex assigned at birth, as well as transgender, a person who does not identify with their sex assigned at birth, often abbreviated to trans. All right. So we've got sex, we've got gender. Moving into the fun part. Or maybe for you or like me, all of this is fun. Sexual.
It's
This is great.
fascinating. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. All right. Now we've got sexual orientation. How a person characterizes their sexual attraction or lack thereof to others. Before I delve into the terms most associated with sexual orientation, I wanted to pause on two that don't connect to any sex or gender. The terms are allosexual, and this refers to an individual who experiences sexual attraction of any kind. Allosexual people are not limited by their sexual orientation. The term simply means someone has the ability to experience sexual attraction. And this is juxtaposed with asexual, often called ACE for short. Asexual refers to a complete or partial lack of sexual attraction or lack of interest in sexual activity with others. Asexuality exists on a huge spectrum, and asexual people may experience no, little, or conditional sexual attraction. Note, y'all are going to get so sick of the word note. Steffi's already looking at me funny. I will not be delving deeper into the spectrum that falls under ACE in this episode. Cool. Now we get to the parts where gender comes into play. This is where I think most of you are going to be familiar, but even if you feel like you know what these terms are, remember, we're defining these for our community. So pay attention, as the definition we're using in this space, in this shared conversation, might vary slightly from the one that you use in your own brain or in your own life. As we delve into these more gender-defined sexual orientations, I am using people's gender for their sexual orientation, what they self-identify as opposed to their sex assigned at birth. Heterosexual, a sexual orientation that describes women who are primarily sexually attracted to men and men who are primarily sexually attracted to women, also referred to as straight. Gay, a sexual orientation describing people who are primarily sexually attracted to people of the same sex and or gender as themselves, commonly used to describe men, but also can encompass anyone not straight. Lesbian, a sexual orientation describing women who are primarily sexually attracted to other women. We will not be using the term homosexual due to its historic and current use as a slur. If you use it in your own life, that is fine. But to protect people who are traumatized by their experience with this word, we will not use it in the conversations we have here. Bisexual, a sexual orientation which describes people who are sexually attracted to people on the binary scale, male, female, feminine, masculine. Pansexual, a sexual orientation which describes a person who is sexually attracted to people of all gender identities, or whose attractions are not related to other people's genders. Side note. Yeah, shaking it up, y'all. Side note. Romance spectrum. It's okay to laugh, Steffi. Just like with sexuality, there is a spectrum of romantic attraction. As we're talking about sex and sexuality primarily in this community, I won't be delving into aromantic and alloromantic. All right, sexual orientations. Check mark. Seffi, anything that you learned, anything that you want to share, anything I missed?
I don't think you missed anything. You were very thorough. Well done. I wanted to say, I guess, something about how, at least I've heard, that bisexual could fall under pansexual
Mm-hmm.
as well.
It can. It can be part of those. Thank you. Bisexual can sometimes fall under pansexual, but primarily when defining bisexual, it's people who are attracted to men or women. And usually
Yeah.
pansexual is like, it doesn't matter. So it's one of those terms. But I like the fact that we're using it because so many people identify, not so many, but a lot of people identify in the queer community as bisexual and fall under that gender binary.
Yeah. Basically, if you want an example of pansexual, because it's the only thing I could come up with, you've seen Torchwood. You've seen Torchwood or Doctor Who, Captain Jack Harkness. He's technically calls himself an omnisexual, but he's pansexual. Yes.
I love it. Yes, y'all. Examples in the media. Okay. So because we're going to talk about different types of relationships, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the definitions we'll be using. Monogamy is a term referring to individuals who are intimate or involved romantically with one person at a time, as opposed to polyamory, a term referring to individuals who are intimate or involved romantically with more than one person at a time. This polyamory is an umbrella term for a wide spectrum that I'm not going to break down in this episode.
We would go way over recording time.
There's like, it would just be forever and ever. All right, y'all. Time for the sexy time definitions, starting with vanilla. Vanilla is used to describe sex that involves no twists or kinkiness, usually described as plain regular sex, typically represented as sweet, happy, very lovey-dovey. Under the term vanilla, this can get very personal. So hold space for people whose definition of vanilla might be more or less expansive than your own. Like for some people, missionary is vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, like doggy style is kink. Y'all just hold space for them.
Mm-hmm. And it kind of leads into the kink.
Which is the next definition.
Right?
We're getting there. We got there. We found it. Bread and butter, y'all. Kink refers to a taste for unconventional sex practices, which can be widely defined. An umbrella term. Things that usually fall under kink are BDSM, CNC, role play. So just like vanilla can have kind of a wavy amorphous edge to it, kink can have that wavy amorphous edge to it. You might not think of some light bondage or a blindfold as kinky, but someone else, that might be the extreme of their kink comfort.
Yep.
So understanding that the terms vanilla and kink have these broad definitions, but when we get to our conversations with individuals, things that one person might call vanilla, another person might call kink, and vice versa.
Kink is customizable.
Ooh, that's so good. Oh, that's such a good one. Okay. Here's where I'm going to make some really sexy things sound very unsexy.
I love it.
All right. Oh, here we are. BDSM, an acronym and umbrella term standing for bondage and discipline, domination and submission, sadism and masochism. All BDSM involves a consensual power exchange. This acronym describes scenes of a sexual or non-sexual nature that involve, but are not limited to, using restraints, unequal power dynamics, role-playing, granting and relinquishing control, and the infliction of sensation, including pain, with enthusiastic consent by all parties involved. It can also refer to the community of people who participate in these scenes.
Yes.
And y'all heard it. Y'all heard it. That's my favorite phrase. My personal kink is in there. Enthusiastic consent. That's
Always.
it. That is the personal kink here at
Yes.
Jace Reads Romance, the most personal thing you'll ever know about me. Okay, but that acronym has like three main components, and I'm going to break those down as well. Bondage and discipline, play that can involve physical restraint, rules, and punishment. Often spoken about in terms of sex, but can go beyond a sexual encounter.
Yes.
As we get into all of these, yes, these are things that will be defined, broken down, really specified, and are so personal to the people who are involved in whatever is happening here. So remember, just like vanilla and kink can have a little bit of blurred edges, a lot of these things will have different definitions depending on the person who is involved with them.
Mm-hmm. Again, kink is customizable.
Kink is customizable. Domination and submission, often shown with a capital D and a lowercase s. So I'm going to break down the kind of components in that kind of interaction. The dominant, an individual who derives pleasure from having power and decision-making responsibility moved toward them. The dominant, sometimes referred to as dom, does not follow instructions from the other partner or partners and is only limited by previously discussed boundaries set by both parties. On the other side, submissive, an individual who derives pleasure from having power and decision-making responsibility moved away from them. The submissive, also known as the sub, does not direct their partner, but has set out boundaries of what they are willing and not willing to participate in. Let me repeat that. The sub sets the boundaries and the dom does not cross them. We also got to shout out our switches. A switch is an individual who can switch between the dominant and submissive roles. All right, that last little grouping, S&M, sadism and masochism. Sadism refers to receiving pleasure, sexual or otherwise, from inflicting intense sensations on and or humiliating another individual. Masochism refers to receiving pleasure from intense sensation and or humiliation from another individual.
Yes.
Big umbrella terms, y'all.
All of them are.
All of them are so big an umbrella.
Uh-huh.
But when we say S&M, we are referring to the intense sensations or humiliation. And that's not necessarily hand in hand or constant with someone who's in a DNS relationship.
Exactly.
So sometimes they're together, but by definition, we break them down. You can be a dominant and not be a masochist. You can be a submissive and be a sadist.
Yep.
They are not automatically paired together.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Here's another term you're going to hear, play. You might think you know what the word play means, but here, within the BDSM and kink community, play refers to participating in a kink or kinky activity. So like not a playground.
I mean, that might be included in the kinky activity, but
let's not the same thing. So play within this conversation is when you are participating in kink or a kinky activity. Another word that you'll hear under the term play might be scene.
Mhm.
And this refers to play time with predetermined participants, types of play, rules, and/or boundaries. So within the kink community, you may set a scene. You will have a conversation ahead of time with whoever is participating about what the limits are, what's going to happen, and set that in motion. It might involve sex. It might have nothing to do with sex, but a scene is usually something that is predetermined ahead of time by the participants, as opposed to just like, we walked into a room and then decided to, no, not
No.
at all.
No.
No. So the last term that I'm going to define in this episode today is SSC, broken down to safe, sane, consensual. And this refers to the act of performing kinky activities in a safe environment that both parties are of sound mind and able to consent to the activities, and that all parties involved are enthusiastically consenting to those acts. This is a big part of the kink and BDSM community. And I want to acknowledge that there is some debate that the use of the word sane in this phrase might be considered, and I want to acknowledge that the use of the word sane in this phrase does bring up ableism because of the mental health reference that word has a historic tie to.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that ableism, a new term is coming into the kink community called RAC, risk aware consensual kink. It has the same intention of SSC, but for those who do have that history and are trying to be really conscious of the words that they use, RAC is becoming a more common term than SSC. Now, people might use both in terms of our community. I want both to be part of our discussion, knowing that if you say SSC or if you say RAC, the intention is there for both. Okay. Wow. Oh my goodness, Sephi, y'all, we did it.
Yay!
This is not the be all end all. This is just the starting point. And it's okay if your head is spinning. It's okay if you don't feel like I delved deep enough. Final disclaimer, none of these terms have truly set definitions. I've done my best to use up-to-date sources that use accessible language. These terms will evolve as our communities and our understanding evolves. Post in the comments if you have a source I didn't list or a definition that's worked well for you. Last note, everything labeled as a spectrum will be delved into deeper in future episodes. Let me know what you would like to talk about next. And that's it for today, y'all. This has been a 3 Paws Productions podcast. You can find Jace and so much more at jacereadsromance.com. That's JAYCE readsromance.com. Follow along on TikTok and Instagram at Jace Reads Romance. And if you'd like to send an email, our email address is jace@jacereadsromance.com. To leave a voicemail with a question or testimonial for a future episode, call and leave a message at 661-JACE-RR. That's 661-529-2377. And finally, like and subscribe so you can get every episode when they drop. And remember, this is Jace, holding space for you.